D. James Kennedy Ministries presents Truths That Transform.
Gender issues are front and center in our nation today. You've heard the rhetoric, and you've seen the stories of transgendered celebrities, athletes, and students. But on today's program, you'll see the story you haven't seen. Someone who underwent a sex change and deeply regrets it. That's on today's Truths That Transform.
This is Truths That Transform.
Thanks, Frank.
On the other hand, we in America. God's design for education.
Welcome to Truths That Transform, a viewer-supported program. I am Frank Wright, president of D. James Kennedy Ministries. Recently, the Obama administration ordered schools to either open their locker rooms and restrooms to those who self-identify as the opposite biological sex or face the loss of federal funding. And Attorney General Loretta Lynch compared opposition to this agenda with the Jim Crow segregation laws of the Old South. But on today's program, you'll meet a victim of the so-called transgender movement. And we'll give you an opportunity to stand with us against the threat to children and women posed by opening women's public facilities to biological men. And as we begin, we investigate this gender issue with Dr. Michael Brown, author of Outlasting the Gay Revolution, where homosexual activism is really going and how to turn the tide. I recently had a chance to sit down and talk with Dr. Brown about society apparently bending over backwards to accommodate those who claim their gender identity is at odds with their biological sex. I hear the term gender confusion spoken a lot. Confusion is an appropriate term because you can change your mind, you can choose to you can make choices about your identification, and you can undo those choices. You can change it back. You can do anything you want to do, and yet everyone must accommodate you each way you turn.
Exactly. Gender fluid is a term that's used. It's not even considered changing your mind. This is just how you identify. There are an increasing number of people who don't identify with any gender. NPR Radio a couple of years ago did interviews, and they said the kids that are on the cutting edge of this, that are really trending on this, they don't even want to be identified by any gender. They said, we met high school kids who said, call me tractor. And now we're supposed to embrace this transgender activism. So here's the big question. Not only is it unfair to have little children in a bathroom where a biological male can come in, it's perverse. It turns the world upside down. It traumatizes, inconveniences, and potentially endangers 997 out of 1,000 to accommodate the three strugglers.
Is there any rational accommodation here? I mean, we are a nation based on conflicting rights and finding these points of accommodation. Is it not rational to say that you can have whatever identity you want, but when it comes to your biological need to deal with bodily wastes, you have to do it here, in keeping with your DNA rather than keeping with some idea that you have. Is that unfair fundamentally to anybody?
No, it's not unfair at all. Again, you cannot turn society upside down to help those who struggle, even if it's a genuine handicap. For example, if people can only drive 20 miles an hour, that's the fastest they're capable of driving, they have to stay off the highway. It's an inconvenience, but it hurts everybody else and it causes traffic jams and potential accidents. So if the man says, well, I dress like a woman, what do I do when I need to use a bathroom somewhere? That's a real difficulty. That's a real problem, but it's not one that you can now put on society as a whole.
What I'm hearing you say is part of what's going on here is that people are demanding the freedom to choose, but they're also demanding that you go along with it. They're forcing you to not only be tolerant in the true sense of that word, but that you to be, and not only for you to be accepting, but for you to be required. It's an imposition It's a choice that they make that enables some people to impose upon others, yes?
Yes. They're not choosing to have the struggle. I can't imagine anyone would choose to have that struggle, but they are choosing to act on it in a certain way and now demanding that you accept it. So, for example, when these bathroom bills are passed, it's not just bathrooms, it's locker rooms also.
Right.
So you go a public gym, you go to the YMCA. A woman just told me this on my Ask Dr. Brown Facebook page. She said that her daughter was among girls coming out of showers with towels wrapped around them when there was a boy sitting there, a young man sitting there in the locker room at the YMCA just going through his cell phone, sitting there. Well, why not? He identified as a woman at that moment or whatever. These are ultimately choices people make. And if it's a matter of going to the bathroom, if you're in public and you're going to have to deal with the bathroom, if you have to dress in accordance with your biological gender, that's the sacrifice you'll have to make. You can't put the sacrifice on everyone else.
The Bible is not confused about gender.
We know Scripture right at the foundation says God created us male and female. Right. We know that God's ways are lasting ways. God's ways are ways of life. God's ways bring blessing. And the world will always hate us. Jesus promised that. Right. 2 Timothy 3:12, all who live godly lives in Messiah Jesus will suffer persecution. We expect that. But let it be persecution for the gospel, not for our ignorance, not for our self-righteousness, not for our hypocrisy. Let it be for the gospel. Then we wear it as a badge of honor, and that'll help shake the society.
Amen. Amen. As Dr. Michael Brown explained, God's design is what is really at stake here. Later in this program, you will meet someone who has experienced firsthand the damage caused by ignoring God's design for male and female. But first, Dr. Kennedy helps us get a biblical grasp on this issue as he shares with us the centrality of God's design for every part of our lives in this excerpt from his message, Noble Origin and Destiny.
The college questions. Do you remember them? Where did I come from? Why am I here? How should I live? Where am I going? Who am I? Well, now those are some of the most important questions any person is ever going to have to answer in or out of college. Now, there are today basically two different sets of answers to those questions. They are diametrically antithetical one to the other. There is the one which is given by the person who believes in creation, the creationist. And his answer, where did I come from? I came from the heart and mind of the Almighty and omnipotent and omniscient God. That I have been made a little lower than the angels. Who am I? I'm a child of the King, a prince of a royal realm. Why am I here? I am here to serve and glorify the Almighty and to enjoy Him forever. How should I live? I should live according to the commandments which He has given me in His Word, which are designed for my good and my advancement. Where am I going? I am going to paradise, which is beyond my comprehension. For eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath it entered into the heart and mind of man what God has prepared for them that love Him. Yes, for the Christian, for the creationist, it is a noble origin and a noble destiny. And in between, our lives are crammed full of meaning, value, significance, and purpose. But the other set of answers are those given by the adherents to evolution. Those who trust in that system which is taught in every public school in this country or practically the world today, a set of answers which are being learned by most all of our students in school from kindergarten through graduate school. Bertrand Russell, one of this century's leading philosophers and skeptics and atheists, unbelievers, evolutionists, who wrote a whole book entitled Why I'm Not a Christian. He told us what life was all about and answered these questions. He said, "We came from we know not where. We are here. We know not why. And we go to some oblivion, we know not whither." And those are the answers to the basic questions of life that Bertrand Russell has given to us. And in spite of the fact that they have nothing to offer, they have completely dominated our world today. This is what unbelief offers to man. I thank God that according to his word, what is man? Thou hast made him a little lower than the angels. Thou hast given him power and dominion over all things. Thou hast placed all things under his feet. What is man? He is a prince or princess in a royal realm. His origin comes from the heart and mind of God, and his destiny is in paradise forever and ever. And it is not even entered into the mind and heart of man what God has prepared for them that love him. This is the glorious origin and destiny of all that trust in Christ. If you, dear friend, are one of those that is still sitting in that shadow and that valley of darkness, one who has no hope, has no meaning or significance, sees no value to life, if you have no expectations beyond the grave, if your final companion is not to be the Christ of God, but rather the conqueror worm in the grave, then I would urge you to lift up your eyes unto the cross. If you would find meaning and value, if you would find your origin and destiny, this is the one. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. This is the one who has gone to prepare a place for us in paradise. This is the one who is the creator of the galaxies. This is God, the Son, who came and died, and by his death, he gives such value and such meaning and such purpose and transcendent worth to human beings as could not even be conceived in any other way. If you would know of your origin, if you would know of your destiny, then open your heart and invite him to come in.
As Dr. Kennedy shared with us, there is darkness when we lose sight of God's purpose and plan for our lives. But that purpose can be recaptured when we turn to Christ. One man who discovered that is Walt Heyer. He fell into the disastrous trap of believing the culture's lies on sexuality, and he lived 8 years identifying as a woman until he was delivered by the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Here's Dr. Jerry Newcomb with more.
I don't ever want to stand in front of anybody's happiness.
He didn't want to be who he was. My heart goes out to him. He's struggling.
Walt Heyer, originally from the Los Angeles area, can relate to that kind of struggle.
I always felt that I should have been a girl, and that I would get more attention, I would get more love, I would be liked better, life would be better. I thought that I was born that way.
But in reality, some bad seeds were sown in his childhood.
When my dad would take me over to Grandma's house and drop me off, for whatever reason, I will never know, we started this routine where she was cross-dressing me in the old closet of the old house. And this got started. And it became a game and our secret. I was getting affirmed as a female. And I knew that when I was a female, my grandma liked me. She fussed over me. She made me a dress. I never got that kind of affirmation as a boy. I convinced my mom to get me a nice cowboy outfit. We were going to go out to a restaurant. My dad says, get that silly outfit off. And I wasn't going to change it. So we got to the restaurant, and he just spent time berating me about what I looked like. In 1955, what happened that was really pivotal for me was I'd been struggling with all these feelings, and all of a sudden the headlines, Christine Jorgensen, man soldier becomes woman.
That I am more of a woman than I am a man.
And so then I realized, wow, you can actually change from one gender to the other. So here, all of a sudden now I'm realizing, well, maybe I'm one of those. Maybe I'm like Christine Jorgensen, and that's what I need.
Still, Walt kept his feelings to himself.
I got married and fostered 2 great kids, and married successfully for 17 years, and eventually became an executive with a large automobile company in the United States. And I rose to pretty high achievement in that company. But by this time I was struggling, trying to cope with my early childhood issues, coping with alcoholism, and trying to work the job, be the father. Some of the ways that I sort of, what I called, relieved the stress of what was going on internally with me, I would go get a motel room, and I would cross-dress and go down into the local bars.
That was in San Francisco. Walt finally saw a leading specialist who dealt with issues of changing gender.
He said, you're suffering from gender identity disorder, gender dysphoria, and he said the cure for this is to have hormone therapy, which he said, I can find you a doctor that can give you the hormones, and then gender reassignment surgery. And so I went in April of 1983 and had the surgery and changed to Laura Jensen officially. And I was working as Walt at the time, so I had a dual identity. I was happy originally.
Despite the initial euphoria, getting the sex change operation proved disastrous to Walt in the long run.
The devastation that occurred as a result of that is just beyond description. Loss of family, loss of relationship with many of the people in my family, divorce, total financial loss. I was bankrupt. I was homeless for a while.
So Walt Heyer, going through life as Laura Jensen, had found things were much worse off for him than before the sex change operation. He even tried to commit suicide, and alcoholism was consuming him. He began to see counselors, one of whom told him he just needed to say goodbye forever to Walt and hello forever to Laura. But real change came through the help of a loving church and some loving Christian people.
When I sat down with Jeff and told him about my life and what had happened, I said, you're not going to try to change me back to Walt, are you? Because I'm liking being Laura. And he says, no. He says, my job is just to love you. He said, God's job is to change you. And so he said, with that, he said, I'll just love you, and the people in the church will love you until God decides that you need to be changed. I was redeemed in a prayer when the Lord came to me and reached out to me, and I actually saw myself as a little baby during that prayer. And he reached out and put his arms under me as a little baby, pulled me in, and he said, you will be safe with me forever. And at that point, the Lord redeemed and restored my life. I knew that that was the love that I'd been trying to get all my life. I didn't get it from Grandma, who wanted to make me somebody else. Dad, who I loved but struggled with me as a cowboy. Finally, there was the Lord who came and says, I'm taking you, and I'm redeeming you. I'm restoring you, and you're healed.
Today, Walt Heyer writes books and counsels people all over the world on this subject, reaching out to them through his website, sexchangeregret.com.
The surgery never can address the psychological and emotional issues that transgenders suffer from with their identity. It can't do it because they're depressed. You can't cure depression with cutting off body parts or adding body parts or changing a body configuration. The TV shows today, primetime content on ABC for LGBT and transgenderism is over 50% content. So we're pushing, you know, this whole thing. We're making it glamorous. What they don't see and what they don't understand is the horrible pain, the broken lives of my ex-wife, the broken life of my life, a broken career. I mean, there's so many things that I would have preferred to do with my life than to end up, you know, so broken by surgical change that now here I am, the Lord's using me to bring the word out and try to help other people prevent them from suicide or an unnecessary gender reassignment surgery. That's my mission today.
The story of Walt Heyer is a wonderful testimony to the freedom and healing found in Jesus Christ. And it also stands as a warning to those who have swallowed the lies of our culture on sexuality and gender, lies ultimately leading to misery and destruction. We must counter lies with the truth, especially when those lies threaten the safety of those we love. Here's my very dear friend, Jennifer Kennedy Cassidy, to tell us how you can help us do that. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you, Frank. The current fashionable notion of transgender causes immense damage in the lives of real people, and it now even threatens the safety of your children and grandchildren. As amazing as it sounds, there are those who want to open up the girls' locker room at your public school to biological males who merely claim to self-identify as female. And they have the full backing of the Obama administration, which is threatening schools that resist with the loss of federal funding. This is nothing less than cultural insanity, and we need to stand against the bully tactics of those who would put our children at risk. I want to ask you to go to our website at djkm.org and sign a petition to your governor calling upon him or her to oppose the Obama administration's radical attempt to force schools to accommodate students who want to use the bathrooms and locker rooms of the opposite sex. Schools are facing enormous pressure, and they will give in unless they get legal backing within your state. So let your governor hear from you. Sign the petition asking your governor to protect your children and grandchildren by opposing President Obama's radical agenda on this issue. It's at djkm.org. And we also need you to help us get the truth out on this issue. Next week, we'll be airing a special program called The Age of Gender Confusion. And we need your help to complete it and get it on the air. When you give a donation to help us do that and continue the other vital work of this ministry, we'll thank you by sending you a DVD copy of this special program, The Age of Gender Confusion. Simply write to us at D. James Kennedy Ministries, P.O. Box 11154, Fort Lauderdale, Florida 33339. Or call toll-free 877-962-7677. Or go online to djkm.org. These are confusing times, and the government and the media are intentionally trying to spread fog on issues of gender and sexuality. We need to cut through that fog with the clear light of the truth. America needs to hear from people like Walt Heyer, who believed the lies and lived as a woman until he was delivered by Christ. Help us get that word out by giving a generous donation, and we'll send you your own copy of The Age of Gender Confusion to watch and to share with others who need to understand the truth on this central cultural issue. Simply write to us at D. James Kennedy Ministries, P.O. Box 11154, Fort Lauderdale, Florida 33339. Or call toll-free 877-962-7677. Or go online to djkm.org.
Much of the case for the alphabet soup of sexual and gender confusion today comes down to little more than emotion and personal preference. A person simply loves who they love or identifies with whichever sex they identify. And who are you to stick your nose into that? How dare you, they would say. They have their feelings, you have yours, and nobody's feelings should interfere with anyone else's, right? After all, in a world like ours, increasingly divorced from reality and truth, feelings have become sovereign over all things, haven't they? Yet reality has this unrelenting tendency to keep butting in, forcing us to grapple with important questions like this one. What if the ethic of sovereign feelings and mind your own business isn't really compassionate at all? What if that ethic of self leads to death instead? Research shows that a staggering 41% of transgendered people attempt to kill themselves at some point. That is 10 times more than the general population. LGBT advocates usually blame those suicides on a supposed lack of acceptance, blaming Christians and others holding a traditional sexual ethic for creating a hostile atmosphere. But really, this is an era when Bruce Jenner can change his name to Caitlyn and win the ESPN Courage Award. This is a time when Christians who refuse to participate in same-sex weddings are prosecuted and fined. This is an age in which every culturally prominent voice, from Lady Gaga to the President of the United States, celebrates homosexual and transgendered people. The fact is, to identify as transgendered in today's America is to enter into a protected bubble in which even those who fail to use your preferred pronouns might face massive fines, as they did in New York City. Perhaps, just perhaps, an inhospitable atmosphere is not the problem at all. Perhaps the problem is that rebelling against God's design brings misery. Dr. Paul McHugh, professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University, studied the transgender phenomenon for decades. He says the notion that gender is fluid, something each one of us can decide subjectively, is, quote, doing much damage to families, adolescents, and children, and should be confronted as an opinion without any biological foundation wherever it emerges, end quote. Dr. McHugh adds that we should no more treat it with surgery and hormones than we would treat anorexia with liposuction. Friends, encouraging another human being in a life-threatening delusion is neither love nor tolerance. Quite frankly, it is hatred disguised as compassion. Real love is willing to do the difficult thing and to tell the truth, whatever the social cost may be. I'm Frank Wright. Thanks for joining us on Truths That Transform. Tune in next time where we will air our special program, The Age of Gender Confusion.
Today's program is available on DVD for your gift to this ministry of any amount. This has been a production of D. James Kennedy Ministries.